Hey, in this video we're going to quickly look at what are the goals of cyber attacks, how can we categorize them, and let's give a couple of examples. Alright, so we'll jump right in. Why do cyber attacks continue to occur? So we can look at the list here and we can see some of the biggest reasons for cyber attacks. Often cyber criminals are after money. So financial gain is a large motivating factor for cyber attacks, especially in countries where the law doesn't reach people perpetuating these cyber attacks, and especially in countries where one victim is a great payday. Espionage. So cyber criminals attack different organizations with the goal of stealing sensitive information, such as intellectual property, and then they can use that for competitive advantages, or they can sell it to another party. Sabotage. Sometimes the cyber attacks, the purpose is just to stop something or break something. And all of these is not only criminals, this could also be something we call state-sponsored, where there are actually countries that are attacking each other, either overtly or covertly, and then sometimes different countries will actually work together to create attacks on other countries where they have a common enemy. The next reason that people perform cyber attacks is to be part of a movement, a protest, or activism. So there are people who have an ideology that believe in a cause, and they see something that they believe is wrong in the world, and one of their ways to fight back or demonstrate their beliefs sometimes is to work in a cyber attack campaign. So you may agree and disagree with who their targets are, what their methods are, but typically they are still breaking laws, right? But protest and activism. And the last one we'll talk about in this video is terrorism. So terrorist groups have become better and better at using cyber attacks to carry out their attacks against the groups that they believe are in the wrong. So these are some of the goals, some of the main reasons why cyber attacks happen. Let's take a look at how we can kind of categorize the cyber attacks. So we can think of it first by who is the threat agent? Who's carrying out the attack? Is it an individual? Is it a gang? Is it a group of attackers? Do they know each other? Are they completely anonymous to each other? Do they have a common enemy? Or is it a nation state where it's actually sponsored by a government from an agency? So those will be the threat agent. What is the motivation? Just a moment ago, we looked at several different motivations or goals. So financial gain, espionage, sabotage. Sometimes it's just people are wanting to cause damage or prove that they can do something, right? Or sometimes they want to highlight, hey, your systems are weak, right? So again, almost always they are committing a crime, but these are some of the motivations that people will say or prove that they are doing for these reasons. The next way we can kind of categorize some of the attacks is by looking at the method. So how did the method happen? Did they actually hack something? Did they use a method called phishing? We'll look at several methods. We'll look at 25 methods in just a moment. Did they use the human factor and use social engineering? Or did they use malware? And so we can kind of create a big category of methods through seeing something like this. And then what is the impact? So how big was the loss or the burden or the damage or the loss of life, right? And so through these we can kind of categorize different types of attacks. There is a very large chart by an organization called MITRE that will also break this down further if you're interested. you can look for the TTP by MITRE. Right. And that's the tactics, techniques, and procedures. Okay, so next let's look at some examples. Okay, so this is not an all-inclusive list, but this is 25 common types of examples of cyber attacks. So I'm going to go through them pretty quickly. Malware is software that is bad for your computer. Phishing is someone sending emails to try to trick you into clicking on a link or opening a file, and then bad things will happen to your computer, your information. Data breaches are when companies are infiltrated and data is taken. Right? Vandalism is when an attacker is able to get access to a system and defaces it. Think of it as digital graffiti. Natural disasters, these are things like tornadoes, hurricanes, insider threat. These are people that work for you and they are disgruntled employees or they're dishonest employees. They have insider access, and those can be some of your most dangerous ones because they have the access already. Sometimes the insider is doing this intentionally, and sometimes they just don't know better and they make a mistake. Supply chain attacks. This is looking at, you're going to get an update from a known good source, but the attacker has inserted themselves in between, and as you're getting the update, they poison the supply chain, so you're pulling down poisoned or bad updates. Zero-day attacks. These are one of the most difficult to prevent against because we do not know that these types of vulnerabilities exist yet. And so how do you protect yourself against zero-day attacks? The answer is a lot of times you can't, right? So you have to have all of your other layers of cybersecurity. Hopefully your protections, your backups, everything else is there to mitigate any damages from a zero-day attack. Ransomware. This is when an attacker gets to your system and it's essentially encrypts your files and holds your information ransom. You can't get your information back until you pay the attacker. Once you decide, do you pay or not, which is a fantastic question that there's not a single right answer for, then you have to rely on the criminal being a good old-fashioned honest criminal and giving you the key, and hopefully they didn't leave themselves a back door to get right back in. So it's quite a conundrum. DOS, or denial of service. This is where an attacker tries to constantly barrage your system to make it where the availability is not available, so the system can't respond. Man in the middle. This is something where the attacker inserts themselves in between two machines communicating. This used to be really popular with especially wireless, especially open wireless attacks. You could have a person listening in and passing the information back and forth. Session hijacking. This is looking at taking the cookies, this session, when you've created a web connection, and the bad guy takes the cookie, takes the session, and is able to then impersonate you after you've already logged in. SQL injection. This is a web-based attack where the attacker is able to take a web form and input SQL code, and if the website is not properly doing all of the controls, validation, and looking for the correct data types, then they can get access to the database, delete the database, insert records, and have a great bit of success causing havoc. Cross-site scripting and cross-site request forgery attacks. These are types of attacks where they're able to insert themselves while the web browser is trying to grab information from a web page. A brute force attack. Think of this on passwords. Brute force means they're just going to try every single combination, right? So these can take a lot of time, especially if a person has a long password. Dictionary attacks. These are trying to guess passwords using words in the dictionary. So that's why recommendations are to not use words in the dictionary. And that includes foreign languages as well. Social engineering, this is a huge category. This is essentially tricking the humans into giving you what you're looking for. Physical access, passwords, information, whatever it may be. This can be done in person, over the phone, through email. It's a big category of how can we trick the human to get past all of the technological controls that have been put into place. Physical attacks, this is physically going to the place and attacking something physically. So maybe you damage a server, maybe you're able to plug in some sort of hacking device or key logger where you're able to record the keystrokes and perhaps even send them back remotely to the attacker. Environmental attack, this could be looking at something like causing power outages, floods, fires, things of that nature. Regulatory and compliance attacks, so this one's attacks or not. This is issues with whatever your regulating body is. If they can find that you're falling out of compliance. Human error, this is again related to number 6, the insider threats. Sometimes your humans make errors, and that can cause problems with, like number 18, social engineering, and several other things. Third-party attacks. This one, a good example is the Target breach, where the third party had access to the HVAC, the AC system, and they did not have some things configured properly, and the third party had access and they were able to infiltrate the organization. Okay, so those are just some examples of the types of attacks. Again, the list is not exhaustive, but I think that is enough time for now. Hopefully this has given you a really quick introduction to several types of attacks, how we can categorize them, and the goals of why cyber attacks continue to occur.